Today, I'd like to talk to you about 4 steps for personal futures planning for your loved one with a brain injury. You may be wondering what is, personal futures planning, and essentially, it's kind of an elaborate phrase for how to go about delving into your future. And I kind of came across this when I saw this book called Moving On. It's a personal futures planning workbook for individuals with brain injuries. And it's really fascinating, and I would definitely recommend getting a copy of it. You can print it off of the internet if you just do a search. I can't remember where I saw it, but it's not that long. It's about 62 pages, and I'm going to go into some of the specifics of it because I really think this is helpful for one of your loved ones with a brain injury. So to begin by saying, what is personal futures planning? You know, most people have future goals. They're goal-oriented, and people with brain injuries are really no different. You know, they want to try to have a clear picture of what they want for themselves now and in the future, and it's also a way of developing a mental image of what they want for themselves. And so the only difference is that they have been impacted by a brain injury. So depending on what they remember, what they don't remember, and the struggles that they're having, this is a way of sort of visually illustrating for them how they can take stock of their former life, the changes that have occurred to them, and what they want to do in the future. And to do this, you want to help your loved one develop what we call a mental map. And as you know, a regular map is just a picture of how to get from one place to another. And this is really no different. It just focuses less or not at all on geography, but rather on how they want to get from one place to another in their life. And the benefit of it is that it's visual. And of course, we all know that we learn better visually than from hearing, or what we would call auditorily. And like anyone else, people with brain injuries, they still have hopes and dreams, but they have trouble taking action to achieve those hopes and dreams. And it may be things like simple things like losing weight, becoming more physically fit or exercising, their diet, getting a job, becoming more independent, personal relationships, and things like that. And effective futures planning can give your loved one the ability to have hope, overcome obstacles, and also empower them to create a better vision for their future. So there are 4 steps to help them do that. Number 1, gather the closest people in their lives. And we want to make sure that those are people that are good listeners and that you feel would work well with the brain injured person as well as each other. And they want to be a team to help your loved one define what they would most like to change and then plan goals to achieve them and plan their futures. So what you're going to do in this step, you'll make 3 maps. The first map, you'll make a list of the people that are willing to listen and help, and some just basic information about them. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Then the second map would be a list of what they want to change in their life. And then the third map would be a list of their hopes. So you can see with this first step that they kind of centralize what's most important. And it's general, typical things that we would all want. And then that's a kind of a springboard to go into some specifics about how to do that. The second step would be to recognize that they can't go it alone. It's like that Beatles song, we get by with a little help from our friends. And in this case, it's particularly true. So it's a good idea here to look beyond the group to all the other people in their life, to work on expanding and deepening the relationships with those folks. And again, there's 3 more maps. The first one would be to make a list of all their current relationships. And the second map would be to make a listing of all the ins and outs of those relationships. And of course, the third map would be those things that can help them strengthen those relationships and deepen those relationships. The third step would be to redefine themselves. You know, the problem is that their lives have changed. So what previously defined them may cause frustration and confusion because it's no longer attainable. So it's important for them to redefine themselves by reflecting on how their interests and challenges have changed since their injury. So you want to frame this as a blessing or an opportunity, not as something bad that's happened to them, because you want that person to have the most positive outlook and to see this, like any other disability, as something that is a challenge that can be overcome and also offer opportunities that they may have theretofore not considered. In this regard, again, 3 maps. The first one would be a listing of their interests and strengths. Secondly would be to list, or the second map would be to list the challenges and problems with attaining those types of goals. And then number 3 would be to define where they are now. The fourth step is for them to realize their vision. This kind of brings together what they have learned about themselves and to create a vision of what their future looks like and define their actions or a plan to get there. I would, in this regard, I like to make check boxes. I think when people can physically take a pen and check something off, that psychologically it more demonstrates an accomplishment and also spurs them to move on and continue in order to check more boxes. So you kind of make that a visual goal for them. Here, in this regard, again, 3 maps. The first one would be to define the vision. Make sure it's clear and concise and not too complicated. Number 2 would be to define an action plan to create that vision for themselves. And then thirdly, to list or keep track of and check the boxes and encourage them to keep moving. I hope this video has been of assistance to you and your loved ones, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.